Namaskar. I, Samriddhi, welcome you all to Bharata First. And you're watching the 18th episode of FRP on Hot Seat. Every week, team at Bharata First conducts big picture quizzes, which are based on respective days' big picture analysis. The quiz links are provided in the description box, and you can participate them from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. on the day. The winners of this quiz are invited to compete among themselves in the mega quiz, which is held on Saturday. And the ultimate winner from this mega quiz gets to have an exclusive talk with one and only Mr. Frank Rausen Ferreira on the very show of FRP on Hot Seat. So with this, I would like to bring in the mega quiz winner, Athar Paudi. Hello, Athar.
Namaskar.
Yes. So would you like to introduce yourself to our viewers, please?
Yeah, I am Atharva Paude. I am from Indore, Madhya Pradesh, the cleanest city of India. And I recently completed my graduation in the field of bioinformatics. And recently I am working on an agribusiness idea. And my hobbies are writing, cycling, and I have also keen interest in ancient architecture and restoration of agriculture.
This is very nice. Good to have you, Atharva, here.
Thank you.
You seem excited for the conversation.
Yeah, so much excited because this is my third time. I got the chance in the third time. So I'm very much excited for the interview.
Great. So without any delay, I would like to welcome one and only Mr. Frank Rausen Ferreira on this show.
Thank you so very much, Samriddhi, for that lovely introduction. Lovely to have you here, Atharva. Wonderful. Namaskar, namaskar, namaskaram, namaste. Very happy to have you here. And I'm glad that we have someone from Indore. Nice that you brought it in as well, very nicely about how it's the cleanest city as well. Wonderful. It's good. It's good to be proud about where you come from. And that's what I keep talking about time and again. Only with that pride will we be able to take forward the confidence that we have within us. So it's a good start. Congratulations, first and foremost. And I'm glad that it has been third time lucky for you. For some, it is third time unlucky, but it is third time lucky for you. So it's well and good. So all's well that ends well. Very happy to have you here and happy to be interacting with you at a very great time as well, because the puja bell is ringing in the background at home. So the puja is going on. I don't know if you can remotely hear it or not, but maybe if I keep quiet.
Yes, a faint noise, faint sound is there.
Yeah, missing the puja for today, but then I'll catch up after this interaction. But lovely to have you here, and it's a good time as well. Yeah, so go ahead, Atharva. I heard that you just recently graduated, and I'm glad to know that more young people are watching Bharata First and getting involved in this whole journey that I started about 6 months ago. So I'm very pleased with that as well. And I would like to see more youngsters come and be a part of this platform so that we can indeed make Bharata great again. And that is my only wish, and that is my only goal at the moment. So please, yeah, the floor is all yours. Enough I've said now.
So shall I start with my first question?
Please.
Yeah. So considering the present frenzy which is going on with the agriculture concept and the farm laws, sir. So my question is related to that sector. So as it is said that for a stronger society, a society needs an ample amount of nutritious food. And considering India in this context, sir, we see that India ranks 71st in the food security index, and it ranks very lower in the hunger index also. So, sir, my very first question is, how can we ensure the food security when more than 40% of the agriculture produce gets spoiled even before reaching the consumer? And so this is as per the FAO data. So, sir, my question is this.
A bit controversial what I'm going to say right now, but it has to be said. Someone has to bell the cat. So I'm going to say it. Many people don't like my views on the farm laws and don't like my views on farm reforms, but that is what we need. MSP needs to go. It's as simple as that. We are producing more grains and more food stock only in that basket which is there under the MSP. Now that is having a lot of impact on the environment, on the land, on soil, on water, and so many other aspects. Take Punjab, for instance. Once upon a time, it was a surplus water state. Now it's getting into a situation where it's difficult to get water in Punjab, and people are drilling bore wells and going down thousands of feet to get water. That wasn't the case, say, in the 1990s or even up till 2000. Even in this century, that wasn't the problem. I understand that the farmers are upset. I understand that the farmers, are skeptical about moving on, because no one likes change. Now, if you have a website that you go to read news every day in the morning, suddenly you wake up the next day and you find out that the layout of that website has changed and you don't get what you're looking for where it was, and you have to look somewhere else. It upsets you. So same is the case with the farmers as well. But the MSP, when it was brought in the 1960s, was the need of the hour. We needed it then. Has it outlived its utility 60 years later? I would argue that it has. Or even if it hasn't, how do you know that something new is not going to be better unless you try it? So I would request the farmers, or generally the farming community, to look at this issue holistically. I think they should be pushing the government to try and get in some kind of a clause to say, you know what, we are going to try this with your assurance. You are going to support us. In case it doesn't work, then we fall back on a system that we believe in. If it works, it's a win-win situation for everyone. Blockades, protesting, sometimes these protests turning violent is not the answer. When things get out of hand, when there is a heated moment in that particular hour, things get out of control. And that is something that we've seen. I would also blame the government here to some extent as far as food security and food security is concerned, because we haven't really done anything as far as food processing and food storage units are concerned. That has been really a challenge and a stumbling block for us. There have been a few food processing units and there have been a few storage facilities that have come up here and there, but it isn't at the level that we would like to see it. There is so much more that needs to be done. Like you yourself mentioned about the FAO data, about how there are so much of food that goes wasted in this country. We need to bring in a system where this food does not get wasted. You look at the Netherlands or these countries in that particular region, they produce far less milk than any one of us do, than India does, right? But you look at the amount of processed food that they have. You look at the size of New Zealand, it's smaller than many of our big states.
Yes, sir.
But it's still, when it comes to dairy products, they are world leaders. Why? It is because they have robust processing units in place and they have robust systems in place. That is what we need to be focusing on. Same thing with other agricultural produce as well. You look at Brazil. Brazil too is ahead of us when it comes to processed food, jams and other things, right? And this is at a time when the Brazilian economy is not doing very well. So the farm laws issue I've addressed. I think we need to try out something new. Only if we try out something new do we know it's going to work or not. The farmers need to get some kind of an assurance from the government and push for that, rather than sit on roads, sit on streets, on highways, and make life difficult for everyone.
Yes, sir.
Right? And the other issue is food processing. This is what we need to get into, and this is what we need to do.
Yes, sir. To add on to that, I have seen very closely that some marginal farmers feel the brunt rather than the bigger farmers, because they produce the food, but they get very less price that they deserve. Sir. So APMC is working totally different way than in the way they should have worked.
Correct. I agree with you completely. And everything needs change. Change is the only thing that is constant. Nothing else is as constant as change.
Yes, sir.
You may not like change, but that is the only thing that is constant.
Yes, sir. So, sir, shall I move on to the next question?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Sir, taking the cue from the Bharata First initiative, so my question is that, so as it is quoted by many of the scholars, that this is going to be a war of civilization. And sir, India will also be at the forefront of this war of civilization, sir. So, sir, recently an incident happened that an American science magazine by the name of Scientific American. So what they did is they changed the name of pranayam to the cardiac coherence breathing exercise, and claimed that it can stabilize the heartbeat and have a powerful ability to dampen anxiety. So, sir, basically the question on this, my question is that how can we tackle the problem of cultural appropriation that is mostly done by the US and the Western countries?
In a way, I feel it is, we shouldn't do anything about it. You know why? Because we Indians, unfortunately, have been tuned because of Western way of thinking to accept everything that is Western. So
Yes,
at least then, hopefully, we'll honestly take up to pranayam here because it comes from the West,
correct, sir.
right? So I mean, but jokes apart, honestly, I'm telling you, I think more people will now take up to pranayam because some scientific journal in US has said something about it and quantified it with tangible proof.
Yes.
Right?
Yes,
So
sir.
that's what is going to happen. But yeah, now let me. So you spoke about civilizational war, right? Is India a civilizational state?
No, sir. At present, it is not. We have to work on that, I think.
Okay. So do you believe that you want to see us being a civilizational state?
I don't see that being a civilizational state, but I think the concept of Bharat, which was way bigger, I think people should realize that we belong to this Bharatiya identity and this Indic entity, the region that we belong to. I think so that will turn into civilization because the Western ideologies completely change the thinking of the people, sir, right now.
So then what is the difference between you, Atharva, and the Western ideology and the Victorian Enlightenment then? Because where does this come from? The whole issue of civilizational state comes from the Westphalian theory or the Westphalian system. Bharata never had borders.
Yes, sir.
Bharata was never a civilizational state. Bharata was a cultural state. Our
Yes, sir.
civilization can be dated back to 4,600 years. Okay, earlier it was said about 3,000, 3,500. Now there have been new finds in the recent past. Sinoli is one of them, which clearly dates it back to 2,600 BC. So 2,600 BC to 2000 makes it 4,600 BC. There have been excavations in Kiladi in Tamil Nadu and a few others now more recently, which dates back certain artifacts to over 5,000 years.
Yes.
So say our civilization goes back to 5,000 years. I would say that's not where we start. We start much before that.
Yes, sir.
So we need to stop, fantasizing about us being a civilizational state, because that also demarcates you in the exact Westphalian system or Westphalian theory. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And it gives you borders, right?
Yes, sir.
We are a borderless people. We are a cultural state. It is our culture that has kept us together. And that is what we need to focus on. And our culture cannot be dated. No one knows how old our culture is. It is thousands of years old. And we as Sanatanis, as Bharatiyas, need to understand that. The sooner we understand that, the sooner we believe our scriptures, the sooner we say that, yes, this, see, the Abrahamic religions, just because they have something written in their scriptures, we say that it is history. Why can't it be the same for Bharatiyas? Why does it immediately go into mythology?
Yes, sir. Even our beliefs are misquoted as mythology, but so it is totally different, sir.
It is totally different.
Yes,
It is
sir.
totally different. And the sooner we understand this and the sooner we realize this, the better it is for us. And now I'll come back to this point of, why do we need tangible proof? Why can't we just accept what is written in our scriptures? The Britishers are long gone. The Europeans are on the decline, but we still have to think like them. We continue to carry our colonial baggage. We continue to look for proof. We continue to look for some kind of reassurance from the West. Why? That is the big question. We need to understand that our culture came first, then the civilization. So we will always be a cultural state. It's good to talk about civilizational state as well, because at a time when everybody else is talking about civilization, we should not be left behind, because there too, we are leaders.
Yes, sir.
And so we continue to talk about, here I'd like to bring in an example of the permanent seat at the UNSC, right? Some people ask, if you're never going to get this permanent seat in the UNSC, why do you even bother talking about it? Unless we talk about it, nobody is going to talk for us. Only we can talk for ourselves. So as far as civilization is concerned as well, we have to continue speaking about it, because if we don't speak about it, nobody else will speak about it. Everybody will let us go and let us be on the side. Now, what is culture according to Bharata? This is my question to you. What is culture according to Bharata?
I think it will be, there is no exact answer to this question, sir, because as a geographical entity, we are very big, and in as a cultural entity, we're also very big. So I think there will not be exact answer that I could give on this question, sir. I am unable to answer that question, sir.
Okay, so let me put it in perspective for you. Okay, it is the wisdom and intelligence to improve what is already happening in nature.
Yes.
All right.
Yes, sir.
I'll give you some examples. Agriculture, sericulture, horticulture, all these are already happening in nature and they are in the rawest form.
Yes.
We have enhanced what is around us and made it a way of life. And this is the purest form of anything. It can't be purer than this. And we have used the knowledge passed down by our rishis and our rishikas to keep evolving. And that is how we have evolved. But somewhere along the way, we forgot about all of this and we fell prey to other philosophies, to being, to get other perspectives and other cultures ingrained in us. And we forgot our own history and our own culture. And that is the problem. So just to give you another example, just to take this forward and give you another example, I was talking about, culture and how we are a cultural state, just to make that point a little more impactful. And for those who still didn't understand it, I say this also because the sooner we understand that we are a cultural state, the better it is. Take, for instance, one of the great, I say that they are the greatest empire of India because of what they have done to protect our culture and our heritage, the Vijayanagara Empire. There is not much known about them, unfortunately. I only hope that we can get to know more about them, I know enough about them, but everybody else gets to know more about them. We still don't know. The jury is not out on whether it is a Telugu-speaking kingdom or empire, Kannada-speaking empire, or Sanskrit-speaking empire, because they promoted all languages.
Yes,
if there was territory and it was not culture, it would be defined. It is culture that kept us together and culture that is continuing to keep us together. That's why we still don't know whether the Vijayanagara kingdom is Telugu, Kannada, or Sanskrit. And the advantage or the direction in which it is going is Karnataka and Kannada, because their capital city was in Vijayanagara, which is in Karnataka, and that's why it goes that way. So this is another example of a cultural state or a culture state. I hope I've answered your question. I mean, see, it's a very, very deep question and it needs a lot of time and a lot of getting into, but we have limited time. So I've answered it in the best possible way that I can in about 5 or 6 minutes.
It actually widened my horizon of thinking, sir. I really got a way to think in that way. So my next question, sir, is again related to the Bharat. So my next question is that, as we talk about the sciences, and we say that our culture is completely based on science, as we talked about the culture, and our culture is completely based on science. So my question is, how can we change the notion that the Indian sciences like astronomy, Agam Shastra, astrology, and spirituality also, so it is quoted by the West as it is considered by West as a pseudoscience. So how can we change this notion that the world is thinking about?
Considered by the West as pseudoscience, but you yourself in the questions said about pranayam, and they're calling it some heart bot. What did they call it?
Cultural cardiac coherence breathing exercise, breathing.
So there you go. They themselves have accepted it. So what more do we want, right? Now, this brings me to my next point. The notion is already changing. The difference is we as Bharatiyas have to accept it.
Yes, sir.
And the sooner we do it ourselves and not wait for the Western world to justify it for us, in a better way, the better it is for us. Because human consciousness, like you mentioned about pranayam and this whatever cardiac breathing or whatever that is, human consciousness is being studied extensively. You won't believe it or not, it is being studied extensively with massive funding in at least 64 different countries around the world. we are not doing enough. Right? Now we need to understand one more thing. This was already been done by our rishis and rishikas thousands of years ago. What the Western world is now finding as a starting point or a way to start today was done thousands of years ago, or it was the starting point for the rishis when it all began. Okay. So the other cultures have to invent, reinvent, and look for things in front, like, move forward. What we need to do is look within and look into our past. And that is why it is important to understand and learn history, because we learn a lot from it, right? So
Yes,
we need to go back into our system, go back into our genes, because that knowledge continues to be within us and grow within us through our genes, and because of the sheer sense of us being Bharatiyas. So we need to take a step back, go back to what the Rishikas and Rishis spoke about and talked and delivered, and take science forward that way. It is all here. We just have to make the effort of getting it out. That's all. There is nothing more to it. Another aspect, right? Science is not limited just to matter. And the other nations and other countries are realizing that and are understanding that now. That's why you see a lot of funding in sciences like quantum science, quantum physics, quantum sciences, and all those aspects. This was not something that was done, a few decades ago. Now, everyone is getting into it because they know the power of it and they know how important it is. So this whole issue of, sciences just being limited to matter started with the Victorian Enlightenment. We need to understand that there is a material part to science and there is a spiritual part to science, and that's what your pranayam talks about. So to understand what is our scientific know-how and construct, we have to look back, and that is what we are not doing. It's as simple as that. Why don't we look back? The moment we look back, we are ashamed because we are engineered to think so. The first thing they'll talk to you about is the Varna system, without even understanding the science behind the Varna system. And then you mix Varna with caste. What is caste? Caste is jati. There is a difference between Varna and jati. What is Varna? Varna is color. Color to identify and fulfill your potential. Right?
Yes, sir.
Then they talk to you about Johar, they talk to you about Sati without even understanding the science behind it, without even understanding what it is that we did with it. Everything is misquoted, taken out of context. Yes, the Ajurveda talks about the mouth, the arms, and the legs.
The torso and the legs. So it says
Torso and the
that
legs. Yes.
upper part is Brahman, then hands are Kshatriya, and then torso is Vaishya, and then lower part is Shudra.
Correct. But why is it so? Has anybody asked why is it so? The arms and the limbs move. And that is why you need people to go out and do the work and carry the word forward and carry the knowledge that we have gained forward. So that is the job. It doesn't mean that the person belongs to a particular caste. It is even a Brahmin by birth, his Varna can be that of a Shudra. I'm going to leave that for another time because it's a very, very deep subject and too much to go into. But just to leave it at this, I want to say that there's a difference between Jati and there's a difference between Varna. And I'll probably talk about this at length at some other time because it is important for all of us to know about this. So the moment we look back, you're thrown all these aspects, and fellow Indians, fellow Bharatiyas are the ones who throw this at your face.
Yes.
And you immediately get ashamed. I would say don't be ashamed. At the Bharata First Knowledge Center, we've done an entire 50-hour module on just this, on Indian culture, what it means, where it is from, how it has come about, and why we should not be ashamed or why we should not be put down by people who talk about the past, because our past is glorious. We just need to understand the nuances and understand our true past. Only then can we take on these pseudo Bharatiyas who keep talking about caste and throwing it in our faces, right? So it's a whole 50-hour program that we've done at the Knowledge Center. So those who want to get more information about it and want to understand it in a better way can take it up that way, because I will not do justice, and I will not be able to communicate this in the right way in just about 5 to 6 minutes. But anyways, finally, just finishing off on this point of Indian sciences, so I was talking about how the sciences, as far as Westerners are concerned, look for proof and proof based. Giving you an example now. I want to give you an example because just so that you can better understand what spiritual sciences are or human sciences are. You and me, Atharva, are both sick. Okay? We both have the same disease. We go to the same doctor. The tests all confirm that we have the same problem with the same amount of blood loss, blood count, whatever it is, okay, whatever it is that these tests tell you. And we are both prescribed the same medicines. Why is it the way you recover and I recover will be different?
I think that body differs from person to person, sir. The way someone's body works and the other one's works.
And that's what spiritual sciences or human sciences are, and that's what we were masters at.
Yeah, sir.
Our rishis spoke about astronomy thousands of years ago. And when did the Western sciences speak about astronomy?
They never had something like that, sir.
Absolutely. And 500 years ago, the world was flat according to the same sciences, and we continue to learn it today.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yeah.
The rishis did something amazing, because Sanatana Dharma believes in one thing: we all come from one energy source, which is the Brahman. Right? Yes. We are all fractals of that small energy force or energy source.
Yes.
Everything else is a part of that. So we are the universe.
Yes.
We are matter, we are everything. So to understand the universe, the larger sense of the universe, to understand symmetry, to understand all of these aspects, they just need to look within. They looked within and looked at the construct and made the bigger picture. That was the difference, right? Yes, but sir. This is something that we have lost along the way. This is what has to be explained. So that's why I gave you the paracetamol example. So this also denotes one more thing, that the mind is more powerful than the body. And the sooner we understand it, the better it is. You look at the Westerners also, they have used this time and again. They have not written about it and they've not spoken about it extensively. But if you search, you will get several articles about how psychics have been used to find lost helicopters, to find lost pets, to find lost people in the Amazon jungle. That is not material science.
Yes, sure.
Where is that coming from? That is coming from spiritual sciences. And that comes from Bharata. It has gone from here elsewhere. The others are using it. We are not using it. The moment we start using it and we start speaking about it, you're looked at and looked down upon. They say ki he's doing black magic, tantric hai, this thing and that thing. There are those who have taken advantage of this also. I'm not saying no. I'm not saying no. But if it is controlled and if it is taken up by the state and if we take it up genuinely, don't you see what a beautiful effect it will have on us?
Yes, sir.
That is what we need to look at. That is what we need to do.
So my next in the
I don't know if this is a bit much to understand or a little too much to take in, but
to be honest, I started reading about them when I was in 10th and 11th standard. So I really enjoy all these things, sir. And I hope that the coming generation really enjoys that, because this is something that we should realize.
No, I'm saying I hope I'm making sense about what I'm saying, because I don't want it to.
It's completely, sir. I really acknowledge, sir, what you have, the knowledge that you have, sir. I really I do not know how to put in that words, but it's
good,
really
good. As long as it makes sense, I'm happy. Okay, go on, please. Yeah.
So my next and final question is that, sir, considering all the question in this one question, so I would like to put this question with an example. So as you talked about the cultural entity and all those things. So example is like when someone performs the dharmic pujas, before performing the puja, he takes the sankalpa. And so in that Sankalpa, there is a huge Sankalpa, but there is a short phrase which says Jambu Deepe Bharat Khande Bharat Varshe. So that it talks about the geographical entity that we lived in. Our ancestors knew about it. So, sir, considering that in the question, I would like to ask you, sir, how can we make people realize and make them aware about the Indic wisdom and the knowledge? Like our ancestors knew so much, but we don't realize that our ancestors have left so much for us that we are not learning about. Sir.
Again, this is something that has been addressed in our culture course extensively. So I will let me try and it's a very, very deep question, and it needs years of training and years of practice to actually understand this and apply it. First and foremost, what is wisdom? That is what we need to answer. What is wisdom according to you, Atharv?
The wisdom is something that that enables you to think in right way. It tells you what is right or what is wrong to some extent, because no one can decide what is right and what is wrong. So I think
exactly. So no one can decide what is right and wrong. What is right for you will be wrong for me. So it becomes like the 10 commandments in Christianity. You shall not do this, you shall not do that. It's great, it's good, but understand that the 10 commandments came at a time when the world needed it. Right? The world was going through a phase of barbarism. The world was going through a very difficult phase at that point in time, and hence we came up with the 10 commandments so that people could live in that way and live in that conformity. Whereas our wisdom comes from an ancient time, much before that. Right? So what was right and what was wrong was very subjective then. So wisdom is nothing but applied knowledge. If not applied in life, what is knowledge? It is useless.
Yes.
If it is not applied in life, it is not knowledge. Will you be considered a wise man, Atharva, if you have all the knowledge but you don't share it? What's the use?
No, sir, I will not be considered a wiser man.
Exactly. So all of us, thanks to the virtue of being Bharatiyas, have the same knowledge. It has been passed down to us, right? This is something that I mentioned earlier as well. So what we need to do is, everyone has the same knowledge. We have to learn to arrange it in the right way. Arranging knowledge to facilitate wisdom is what is called learning, right?
Yes, sir.
And remember one thing, as Bharatiyas, we have always focused on learning. We have learned from nature. That's why agriculture, sericulture, and horticulture, right? And when there is a different arrangement in each one of us, the learning is different. That's why you are different from me, because the arrangement is different. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
So let's look at it this way. Okay. What is the difference between, say, Sanatana Dharma and the Abrahamic religions? Why is it that we look at things differently and the Abrahamic religions look at things differently? The Abrahamic religions, what they have done is they have interpreted the word of God. Sanatana Dharma has not interpreted the word of God, but they have passed on learnings and passed on knowledge in the form of commentaries. There is a difference between interpretation and commentaries. We, as Bharatiyas, have had a very rich history of disciples writing and narrating commentary. They never interpreted. If Shankaracharya said something, his disciples would just go and commentate on it, would not interpret his word. Right?
Yes.
So there is a difference between commentary and interpretation. Bhashyam and Vyakhya. Interpretation is Vyakhya and commentary is Bhashyam. So that is why the way this knowledge, this wisdom has come down the way it has. So how do we make people realize about this? It's very difficult. Self-realization has to take place. How did you realize about all of this? How did you start being Indic and getting into the Indic Renaissance and started getting into Indic thought?
So I really give credit to my grandfather and father because they kind of pushed me into that, and I started reading from very early age, and I started taking interest in that, sir, because I realized that, sir, we are Indians and we should own that, sir. I think because most of the people don't realize that. That's why I put this question, sir.
Self realization, basically.
Yeah.
So it has to come from within. It has to come from oneself, and it has to come from a place of when you are proud of your history and you're proud of your lineage and your culture.
Yes, sir.
Unfortunately, not too many people talk about it. And the moment you start talking about your culture, like I said, it goes back to Varna, it goes back to caste, it goes back to division. If you want to speak about Varna, it is the same people who follow caste today.
Yes, sir.
Look at a Dalit. Okay, look at a Dalit. A Dalit doctor will want his son or daughter to only be a doctor. But a Dalit PT master will never want his son or daughter to be a PT master.
True, sir.
Isn't that division then? Isn't that caste? Caste propagating caste further. So 500 years later, when this system of caste goes away, and your caste will be based on, what you do in terms of, a doctor or an engineer or a lowly history student, who's propagating it? The same people who are fighting for caste are also making the same divisions, right?
Yes, sir.
So yeah, so it has to come from within. It has to be self-learning. Only then will it. See, I'm not saying that reservation is not good. Reservation, the way it was brought in, is excellent. It should help the downtrodden. It should not help a certain section of society. There's a difference between helping a certain section of society and helping those who are actually in need.
Yes, sir.
That is what is important.
Yes, sir.
So that is what I have to say about this.
That was all from me, sir.
Wonderful, wonderful. Great, Atharva. Very, very happy to have answered your questions. I think I've never spoken about these aspects so openly. I've spoken to my team about it. They hear from me about all these aspects every now and then. But on an open platform, I think this is the first time I'm speaking about it. It was fun. And maybe going forward, I'll speak a little more about it, because I believe that this is something that needs to be said and more people should talk about it. Only then will it go into the heads of other people as well. So lovely having you on the program. Very good questions. You made me wear my thinking hat, Atharva, and brought out a side of me that nobody else has seen before. So wonderful, wonderful. I wish you the very best. Do well, and more power to people like you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Bharata, the land of religions, cradle of human race, birthplace of human speech, grandmother of legend, and great-grandmother of tradition. I'm sure this conversation has a lot to take away for our viewers as well. I extend my massive thanks to Frank sir for putting the things into perspective and for his insightful answers. And I thank Atharva for going up with these questions also. Thank you, Atharva, for being with us here, and namaskar.